One of the biggest mistakes a person can make when trying to understand transphobia, or indeed any bigotry, is trying to figure out the rationale behind said bigotry, when bigotry is, by very definition, irrational. Said irrationality permeates a bigot's entire philosophy, warping their worldview and even corrupting the very language they use, as we're here to talk about today. But first, a quick content warning for the following: transphobia, homophobia, and sexual violence. If you like our work and appreciate the research put into each video, please consider supporting the channel via Patreon. You can also support us by liking, commenting, and sharing our work on social media. Hi there, my name is Ethel Thurston, she, her, they, them, and today we're here to talk about how anti-trans bigots rely on child logic to poison everyday discussion. So I was browsing Reddit the other day when I came across a post in which someone asked why gender-critical fascists referred to gender-affirming surgery as mutilation and HRT as chemicals. And seeing as I have over a decade of experience advocating for the human rights of trans people, this is one I felt I could unpack and thought that you, my wonderful viewers, might also find interesting. So let's get down to business. Starting with how the question has it backwards. That is to say, it assumes that anti-trans bigots looked at the topic and arrived at a conclusion, when they actually started with a predetermined conclusion and changed their language to reflect said conclusion. Why? Well, it reinforces their hatred while simultaneously manipulating the people around them to alter their views, not through the application of reason, but through revulsion. There are three primal emotions that directly feed aversion, an extreme dislike of something, making those emotions easy targets for hate movements. The two most people are familiar with are fear and anger, both of which are present in the bathroom predator myth, the idea that trans women are in fact men who want access to vulnerable girls and women in order to rape them. These narratives rely on fear in the idea that trans women will assault cis girls, and subsequent anger in how the supposed threat should be dealt with. But the third and often forgotten corner of the aversion triangle is disgust. That's why phobias in clinical psychology describe all three: irrational fears, hatreds, and disgusts. And whilst we rarely discuss revulsion as a tool in politics, there is actually a term for this in philosophy, and that is the wisdom of repugnance, also known as an appeal to disgust, or simply the yuck factor. It is a subcategory of appeals to emotion, and, as such, relies on appealing to an inherent sense of revulsion as proof that whatever it is morally wrong and should therefore be condemned. Much like anger and fear, opposite sides of the fight or flight response, revulsion is something that evolved as a means of aiding survival in prehistory. Revulsion to things such as bodily waste or rotting food increased an individual's chances of survival by decreasing the likelihood of catching diseases or parasites, meaning those with a stronger response were more likely to survive and pass on their genes to the next generation. This compounded over many generations, leading revulsion to become one of our strongest emotions, right up there with anger and fear. Sadly, it's not a rational response. It's a vestigial behaviour from a time before we understood concepts such as germ theory, and that means it's easily exploited. If someone can get you as an individual to view something as revolting, it becomes incredibly difficult to deprogram that response, perhaps more so than even fear or hatred. This is because people feel it in their gut, literally, physically gagging anytime they sense whatever it is they associate with said response. Yes, fear and anger trigger the adrenal system, but that response seems almost trivial compared to the sudden desire to throw up. And it is precisely because of that irrationality and intensity that anti-trans bigots use the language they do. When they refer to something as mutilation, they are trying to force your mind's eye to visualize trans people on the operating table being cut into with a scalpel. They're trying to get you to visualize the inflamed scar tissue shortly after surgery, along with all the nasty stuff that leaks out as the body heals itself. Sometimes they don't even leave it to your imagination, stealing photos of gender-affirming surgeries before they have had time to fully heal, all to provoke that revulsion which they can then turn to and go, aha, you see, you know it's wrong. Except here's the thing, the same revulsion can be invoked regarding any surgery. Things are never pretty under the knife or immediately afterwards, these things take time to heal, yet the same rhetoric is never applied to, say, knee surgery or tumour removal. Said yuck factor only matters when it can be exploited as a tool for promoting aversion towards trans people. This blatant double standard in which surgeries are targeted and which are spared demonstrates that the person making this argument knows that such an argument doesn't actually mean anything, but they're relying on you not realizing that. I mean, to give another example, just consider childbirth. Have you seen the reactions of children in classrooms the first time they see the apparent miracle of birth, a euphemism that exists solely as a cover? Revulsion hardly cuts it. And yet, many of those children will, by maturing beyond the logic of a child, come to view said birth as this amazing thing that they one day hope to share with their significant other. And I say mature out of it because appeals to disgust are, ultimately, the logic of the immature. It's an appeal to the same basal response tapped into any time a child raves about cooties. Is that still a thing? Do children still believe in that? I don't know. But back in the day, kids used to believe that boys and girls could transmit some sort of mythical disease through contact. That's what anti-trans bigots are trying to tap into. Playground logic. Returning to gender-affirming surgery, particularly for trans men and AFAB MB folk who have undergone a double mastectomy, because, let's be honest, that's who are most frequently targeted by this rhetoric. While said scars can look unappealing immediately after surgery, given time to heal, that changes. Like, I've got growth marks on my sides that are more pronounced than some of those scars, so even taking them on aesthetics, which should never be the deciding factor for trans health, just to be clear, it completely falls apart when you sit down to have a mature conversation about what they're picking at. Of course, this is nothing unique to gender-critical fascism. This is a method that has been used against marginalised communities throughout history, including lesbian, gay and bisexual people. One well-known example, at least in the secular community during the early 2010s, was Pastor Semper, better known online as the "They Eat the Poo-Poo Man." Pastor Semper gained international attention with the release of 2010's Missionaries of Hate, a documentary that exposed how US evangelicals were funding extremist religious groups in Uganda in an attempt to instill and uphold anti-LGBT+ laws. In said film, Pastor Semper describes a number of sexual acts, such as rimming, fisting and fecophilia, to a mixed crowd of Christians and Muslims. He then rather incorrectly asserts that these are things all gay and bisexual people do, and only gay and bisexual people do, all in an attempt to disgust his audience, thereby further turning them against the LGBT+ community as a whole. It is, of course, utter bullcrap. And the same thing can be said about the gender-critical fascist usage of chemicals to describe HRT. If you're like me and have spent any sort of time in or around secular circles, you likely recognise this as the very same appeal made by New Age quacks when promoting natural healing as the solution to disease. It's a fallacy known as an appeal to nature, the idea that injecting snake venom into your blood must be good for you because at least snake venom is natural, unlike all these synthetic medications. Just unpacking the language here, namely the idea of HRT as chemicals, all hormones are chemicals, regardless of whether they're produced naturally by the body or not. So this argument makes no sense linguistically. All matter in the universe has a chemical composition. That's what the word chemical means. And whilst an appeal to nature might seem separate to an appeal to disgust, I'd argue that our hang-ups regarding synthetic hormones and other medications largely stem from our societal views on processed foods, how we've been blasted by adverts, capitalist propaganda, selling us the message that natural is better and artificial is worse. Think about the pink slime of McDonald's food, or Jamie Oliver's crusade to get children off of chicken nuggets by showing them how they're made. Of course, there's nothing intrinsically wrong with processed foods. They're a modern wonder that have saved countless lives. I mean, to be able to take something otherwise unappealing and turn it into something that people not only get nutrients from, but actually enjoy, is great, and is something that, in a more just system, would be celebrated for reducing waste by making use of byproducts. Processed foods are neutral. The problem rests not with the process, but with the companies trying to get people addicted to their foods in order to sell more, thanks to this terrible thing called capitalism. That's the irony behind all this. The people selling us the myth that natural is inherently better are the people who caused the problem in the first place. The ones who packed our foods with terrifying amounts of sugar and salt are the ones sponsoring health groups that allow them to pretend like their food has changed and is even endorsed as a more natural and healthy alternative to their competitors. Such marketing has been very effective, allowing corporations to sidestep their personal responsibility to instead hide behind natural-looking branding. Yet that cultural revulsion remains. This idea of disgusting factory processes, allowing it to be tapped into anytime someone attacks synthetic medications, such as HRT. This is something most people have drilled into them for years, if not decades, and I think that's why we still have people making the argument that it's chemicals and chemicals are bad, because they're stuck in this irrational mindset. So yeah, I just wanted to bring this to your attention, since disgust, for as strong as an emotion as it is, often gets overlooked or outright ignored, much to the detriment of our causes. We need to be able to spot it as well as discuss what's taking place, as being aware of how such emotional manipulation takes place is the first step towards becoming immune to it, and I think that is something we should be striving towards. Though what do you think? Are there any other factors at play here? Can you think of any other appeals to disgust? How do you feel about me getting ideas for videos from Reddit? Are there any topics you'd like me to cover? Did you notice something I missed? If so, be sure to let me know in the comments down below. And if you appreciate what we do here and want to help out, please consider becoming one of our wonderful patrons who make our work possible. On that note, we'd just like to thank the following people: Matthew Kovac, Hannah Banghart, Gerrit Van Voorst, Goddess Alita, Marble Wings, Sosh Daniels, Flynn, Higgins a Seagull, and Ocean on a Teaspoon. And for myself, Edita and Levi, take care now.